I'm happy to introduce Arvind Dutta. Arvind's an experienced product leader and currently leads the global strategy for Microsoft's Teams extensible experiences and the media portfolio for Teams chat and channels. Prior to Microsoft, he held roles at Fluke Corporation and Corning Incorporated, and has a wonderful background in industrial design as well that I hope we get a chance to ask him a little bit about. But with that, I'm going to pass over to Arvind to share screen and get things started.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you for joining, and thanks, Productboard, for the opportunity. I think you all are doing a great job in building this product community. So today we are going to talk about collaboration. And I actually want to begin with a question. So if you can, in the chat, just type in, how collaborative are you personally? On the scale of 1 to 3, 3 being you feel you are very collaborative, and 1 being, I like to be with myself. I like to work alone. I'm best when I'm working alone. So if you don't mind, great. I see some numbers. 2.85, 3. Nice. I'm seeing a lot of 3s. No 1s here. That's great. So let me ask one more question. When you think of your team that you work in your company, and you think of the different organizations or functions and teams that you have to deal with, does it look like A or does it look like B? When you think of your team, which image do you relate to? So go ahead and put your responses in the chat. Interesting. B, working towards A. Interesting. A mostly. B. It depends on the phase of the product. Fantastic. Yeah, those are all great responses. So collaboration is a very interesting thing. And I'm yet to meet somebody who would say that they are not collaborative. Every individual feels they're collaborative. But on the other side, the reality is that when we think of organizations, there are different teams, and many companies want their teams to be well integrated, that look like the model A here. But the reality is that they end up operating somewhat in a silo, right? And I see that in responses. So there is this conflict of individuals being extremely collaborative, while on the other side, the reality is that the teams end up becoming somewhat siloed. And the reason for this is that different teams have different goals and objectives. So by nature, they are operating and behaving in a way to achieve a different goal. So that is why collaboration is important. And when the teams are not collaborating, it is extremely expensive. When the teams don't collaborate, usually you miss your deadlines. The product is not successful. There is no product market fit. And the team overall ends up performing at a very low bar. So it's very expensive for teams to not collaborate. And that's why collaboration is super important. So my name is Arvind, and currently I'm leading the global product management strategy for Microsoft Teams, extensible experiences and media. And in my current role, I was calculating last night, and I think it's easily over 100 plus people that I have to collaborate. So in today's session, I'm going to talk about product manager's role in the product lifecycle, and how can a product manager collaborate across the 5 stages of lifecycle. And then we'll end up with some takeaways, and use the chat to post your questions. So when we think of product development lifecycle in any company, and also think of your company, it essentially looks something like this. So your product is in the current state, and you're trying to take the product to a future state. And this goes through a bunch of steps that looks something like this. There is a discover phase where you're trying to identify the problem. There is a define phase, develop and test phase. Then you launch the product. And then ultimately, once you ship the product, there is a support phase that happens. And in essence, the product development lifecycle can be broken down into 2 parts. There is a part which is all about value creation, where you're identifying the problem and you're building the product. And there is a part of value capture, where once the product is ready, you're trying to ship it and sell it to the end customers. And there are two types of crew that are typically involved in this. One that is part of the value creation. And here you have your friends in engineering, design, research, data. And on the value capture side, you have your marketing, sales, support teams. And I like this analogy of your company being a ship. And think of these two crews that you have to collaborate with. One on the value creation side is responsible for maintaining the engine of the ship. And one on the value capture side is responsible for the customer experience of the ship on the deck and just all over the place. So these are the two teams that operate the ship. And then we have this role of a product manager that brings these two crews together and makes sure that the ship is running in the direction where we want to go from the current state to the future state. So in the following slides, we will go over what are these different steps and how can a product manager help collaborate across these different personas that you have in your company. So let's start with phase one, and this is the discover phase. And in this phase, we are essentially trying to identify the customer pain point or a business opportunity to work on. And over here, usually where the collaboration breaks down, and which you should watch out for, is when the goals and the language that you use are misaligned. So here is an example from my past, where in one of my previous companies, on the product management side, our goal was retention. And on the product marketing side, our goal was user acquisition. And you can imagine when the goals are different like this, these two teams are behaving differently and they're investing in features and initiatives that are not necessarily aligned. So an example is like even the vocabulary of how we were defining what is active user was different. So in terms of our product team, we were defining active user as somebody who's actually using the product. And on the marketing side, active user was defined as somebody who signs up to the product. So you can imagine how these two are completely different things when it comes to actual outcomes. On the product side, usage would mean we are investing in features that drive more engagement. While on the marketing side, once a user signs up, they call it a win. So a misaligned goal and a different vocabulary is a huge red flag. And the way to overcome this is every company has a planning cycle, and before the planning cycle, that is the window of opportunity to align all with these different groups, whether it's your engineering group, design group, marketing group, to sit with them and align on a common shared objective. Different companies have ways of doing it. There are OKRs, North Star metric. So whatever your company has, so align on a common shared vision for your product. So in this case, we ended up saying our goal is to grow acquisition by 15%. So you can see how specific it gets. So now product is trying to build features that remove the friction of onboarding, while marketing is also aligned and they're building campaigns and messaging to basically help customers getting acquired easily. And then we have a clear metric of 15%. So that drives what kind of engagement is needed. So aligning goal would be a first step. Then the second thing in the discovery phase is also doing joint research initiatives. And here, usually in large companies and mid-sized companies, what happens is a lot of teams are doing the research, but it is still in a silo. So for example, marketing does customer research and market research, and product teams will do their own user research, usability research, and design might do their own usability research as well. But sometimes these insights are not shared across the team. And there is a huge benefit of doing research together. And the benefit is that if instead of a product manager sitting with a customer and doing the research by themselves, if they have, let's say, a designer and they have a marketer in the panel, you would not only have diverse perspectives, because when a customer talks, you pick up something and a marketer would pick up a completely different thing, and then the designer would have a different perspective. So one, you're bringing in different perspectives from that same session. And second, you're also getting a buy-in even before the product is built. So once you go back to the company, all three of you from the design side, product side, and marketing side in this example would say the same thing, and you would agree on the common insight that will drive your product roadmap. So research is a big opportunity. And once you have research, the other part is to actively share this research insight broadly in the company. So although you had design, product, and marketing in the specific example, you would still want to share this with engineering, and you would want to share it with sales to understand and validate some of these insights that you brought in the company. So in my previous role, we used to use like a shared space, and there are different ways of doing and sharing research, whether it can be in the form of brown bags that you can do, or you can use things like Teams channel, right, where it's a common shared space. You can use SharePoint. There are different tools available that you can use for this, but essentially, once you have your research done, document it, which is usually where that's the hard part. But once you do it diligently, you post it in a place, so it's like a single source of truth. And anytime anyone from any department wants to refer back to it, it is available, and there's a common shared space of getting it. And likewise, you can also start getting feedback on that, so it becomes your active repository of your customer insights and research. So now the ship is sailing to the second stage, which is the define stage. And here we are trying to define what exactly we need to build. So now we have some insights, and now we are trying to define that scope of what we want to build. And over here, usually the big silo is that product team essentially owns the PRD, product requirement document, or writing the spec of what needs to be built. But where other teams get blindsided is that they're not even involved. And here what happens is, what I've seen from my experience is product manager starts writing a doc, they review it with their immediate team, with their managers, and it ends up, mostly being in the product group, maybe touching engineering and design, but in many occasions, you would not even talk to your marketing team, sales team. So remember the value capture team, their feedback is also super important in this stage, because they have a different perspective on customers. So sales, for example, they meet customers on day-to-day basis, and their insights are almost like real time. So you should also take this opportunity to validate what you're writing up in the PRD, validate it from the value capture team, from sales and marketing. The opportunity here is to really collaborate in spec and design reviews. There are, again, different tools available, but you can start with a simple Microsoft Word document. And this document you can share, and sharing doesn't have to be like a meeting always. It can be asynchronous. For example, you just share it out in an email, and then everyone provides their comments in that document. So that's a great way to collaborate, and you resolve the comments within the document. Likewise, there are tools like Figma, where you have your initial wireframes drawn out. You can again share it out with few folks from cross-functional teams like engineering and get their feedback within the Figma file. So there are different tools available. The big opportunity here is to collaborate along the way and not wait until the spec is written and signed off. And then, of course, one of the big things that product managers own is the feature prioritization and roadmap. And this is a very, very powerful tool to collaborate, because this is where you are bringing all the teams on the same page in terms of what is coming next and what is the value associated with it. And there are different ways you can do this for the value creation team and the value capture team. Think of it like an internal roadmap, an external roadmap. And accordingly, there are different tools available. I'm sure Productboard also has a bunch of tools that I may not be totally aware of, but use tools like that to create and document your roadmap and share it with all the stakeholders, and have a common understanding of what are the features that we believe are must have, should have, and could have. So now let's sail the ship even further. So now we go to the develop and test phase. And over here, we are trying to not just do it in a waterfall fashion where there is a documented spec and engineering is building it, but rather more in an agile manner where we are trying to test some ideas through some A/B testing, and we are building it building mocks and building it along the way. The big red flag usually in the build and test phase is that teams get blindsided. And here, usually, from my experience, I've seen that it is handed over to engineering, and engineering is like, in this example, don't talk to me until the next 3 sprints until I build it. But the opportunity here is, in the agile world, we have the chance to test things while it is building. So, for example, there could be a feature flag or something that you can experiment with a certain population. So before that entire feature is built out, you can get some real-time feedback, and you can also test it internally within the company. But the big point here is that don't have your teams blindsided, and don't think of the develop stage as a waterfall. And what are some ways to test it? So the testing can happen all the way from low fidelity ideas to maybe like a simple prototype testing, or maybe a qualitative interview, all the way to a high fidelity idea where you actually build like the MVP version and do a A/B testing. And this is where different teams can help you. For example, as a product manager, you may have limited access to customers, but your friends in marketing and sales, they work with customers day in and out. So in many cases, you can just take an idea and partner up with your marketing and sales and get real-time feedback through them. So they can give you access to customers, and then you can bring your ideas. And likewise, design can help you with things like usability testing. So once you're building your idea, you can build up mocks that can be, that can go through some usability testing with users, and you can get some real-time feedback as well. So leverage all these different partners to test while you're developing. And now let's sail the ship even further to launch. And this is the place where now we are actually shipping the product on the product side, and marketing is landing the product with the customers. So this part is essentially marketing wheelhouse, but where the red flag in this particular stage is that product is not even involved. And that is a missed opportunity, because although marketing is doing all they can to launch the feature, product still can gain a lot of insights and actually should weigh in on what the actual messaging is, so that the feature value lands with the product messaging that the marketing is landing with the customer. And here, typically, you would see that marketing would say that, thanks for giving me this feature, but sometimes I don't even understand what this feature does. So if you're seeing that in your company, that's a red flag, and that's an opportunity to bridge. And likewise, on the marketing side, once the product is ready, they would essentially start working with sales. But on the product side, they would be like, product is done, now let me move on to a different product. So the opportunity here is to align on how we want to land the product. What is the go-to-market strategy? So in this example, so this is Expedia.com, and I would imagine that one of the goals for Expedia team on this page is conversion, right? So if you're booking your holiday, you're doing your research, and you would be probably doing research on multiple websites. So the goal here is to give that right marketing offer so that the user can convert. So this is where product should actually partner up with marketing, so that product can actually deliver insights about the customer, like which are the customers that are highest propensity to convert based on a certain offer, and marketing can customize those offers and maybe those locations and create specific custom offers for that customer, so that together with product insights and marketing campaign, we can convert the users faster. And likewise, on the other side, there is Expedia mobile app, and here you can see the goal somewhat is like retention. So in this case, we are seeing that the product is asking the user to sign up for a reward program. And in this case, you can imagine the product is building this feature that helps in engagement, and while the marketing has created this reward program or points program. So together, now as a team, we can work towards driving retention. And then finally, the ship has sailed to the last stage, which is the support. And over here, Usually in large companies, there is a support team, and this support team might actually sometimes feel that, hey, when did this feature even release? Nobody told me about it. So that's again a big red flag. And likewise, the product team might feel like, okay, support team, just tell me what bugs to fix. But by the way, I have moved on to a different feature. And sometimes other teams may not even know that there is a support team. However, support is a very important phase, especially in the SaaS world, where in the subscription economy, the barrier to exit is very low. And that's where once the product ships, our job is not done. In many cases, it has just begun. So in addition for the product team to be engaged with the support group in fixing the bugs, getting real-time feedback, it is also a great opportunity to collect feedback on what more features to include, what are the gaps in the current product. So it's a great opportunity to loop it back into stage one of where we all started, which is discover phase. So by this time, we must be thinking that, of course, collaboration is important, and product manager is the main character in this entire story to drive collaboration. But essentially, PM is more like a silent warrior. So instead of being the actual pilot, we are the land crew that are helping all these pilots fly their planes, whether it's marketing, sales, engineering. Product enables different teams to do their best job, essentially by bringing them together. So I'll leave with some final thoughts. So think about your company. Think about how product lifecycle happens in your company, and start with asking yourself some questions. The first one is, how well do you know your stakeholders? When was the last time you spoke to a support person? When was the last time you spoke to a salesperson? Like, do you know them? Especially in the remote world, it is even more important to build relation. So next time when you go back to your office, just pick up the phone and maybe try reaching out to somebody you haven't spoken from in marketing. How can you align on shared goals? So think of when is the next planning window coming up in your company? Like companies have semester cycles or quarterly cycles. Some companies have ongoing planning. So whenever there is that window of opportunity for you, use that planning cycle to align on a common shared goal with your stakeholders. How are you collaborating at each stage of PLC? So think about all these 5 stages we talked about, all the way from discover to support, and think about how you can collaborate. Also think about how you can build a culture of experimentation, and don't feel that you're alone in building this product, doing the experiments, because you have all these different stakeholders that bring different skill sets. And that's where you can collaborate and build a better product. How can you bring clarity to areas of ownership? No company will ever define the roles of product manager, product marketing very clearly. And there are many other roles that may also overlap. So when there is confusion, just reach out and sit with that person and try to clarify what is your role and what is my role. And that also helps essentially define your boundaries, removes any confusion, and then makes you collaborate better. How can you deliver frictionless customer experience? Ultimately, our goal in the SaaS world is to ship a product that is frictionless, and then that delivers continuous value. Our job is not done when we ship the product. So finally, what I want to say is that collaboration is everyone's job, but product manager really owns it within the company. And many times what happens is that a product manager may be too much consumed in building the product, and you may miss out the opportunity of collaborating with everyone else.
Awesome. Thank you, Arvind. I really, really appreciate it. Maybe we'll just open things up for some questions and Q&A. If people have anything they want to go into the Q&A and ask Arvind about this. I have a couple here maybe I'm going to get started with, but I'm thinking more about the challenges of organizations of different sizes and collaboration. And so are there some patterns across collaboration that you've seen that are somewhat different in a small organization, like a small startup. We have lots of companies and teams and people like that are in smaller product teams and smaller organizations, and different dynamics they're dealing with there. Whereas you're in Microsoft, which is a, pretty substantial organization in terms of its size and stuff like that. But are there some patterns in there that are uniquely different to the organization sizes?
Yeah, Scott, that's a great question. And, I'll go back to beginning of my presentation where we started with every individual is collaborative, but when it comes to teams, that's where it sort of usually breaks down. And usually when companies start, it's a small team, and what happens is this team is self-organizing, right? As the product is evolving, as the team is evolving, small group can identify each other's strengths and weaknesses, and they can self-organize, and based on whatever they're interested in, they form a team. And that usually works extremely well. But as the product starts growing, as the team starts growing, now you have more than 100 people, for example. It is not possible to know everyone. So although individuals have best intent, now we have to have processes in place to make sure that collaboration happens.
Yeah.
As a product manager, once you start reaching this big stage, I think it is very important to start a few things. Number one is to start communication. So think about the 5 stages I mentioned. Very important to communicate at all these stages what exactly we are trying to do, and maybe have a bias on the side of over communication rather than under communication, because once the teams are big, they say you have to say something at least 3 times for somebody to register, because there is so much going on in the company. The second thing I would say is documentation. That is one of the biggest weapons that product managers have, is documenting everything, starting from your product requirement document, PRD, to your roadmap. All these are your tools to help you collaborate better. So be very intentional about what are you documenting and how are you sharing. As I mentioned, roadmap is something that you may want to build something for your feature creation, value creation group, and you may want to create a version of that for value capture group, making sure that your internal roadmap is what is within the bounds of what you're building and you're still hypothesizing on, and while what you're communicating to end customers is much more open and available outside. And the final thing I'll say is feedback. So as you think of these 5 stages, and the team is growing big and big, it's hard. It becomes even more hard to get real-time feedback. In small groups, when you're still a startup, you can just call up somebody, or you all can get into a room and then talk about what is working, what is not working. But as the teams grow, as you start having cross-functional teams, like you have a sales department, engineering department, design department, now it's even more important to get feedback. So think of feedback mechanisms. So these could be, these could be anything from small group meetings to a common shared space where you are, for example, you're sharing your product requirement document, and within that people are commenting. You can also gain feedback on process, and this can happen during the planning cycle. But have those mechanisms in place. So again, communicate, document, and feedback.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great framework. Yeah, that's a great framework. I think in particular, to your point, we forget that a big part of our job, and it's a big theme of that we're talking about a lot in this quarter, is our job is to be a storyteller, to be a communicator. And we get stuck in the weeds sometimes of the practical execution and the day-to-day things that we got to get done in our craziness of our calendars, and we actually forget to talk to other people. And it's just being intentionality, applying some intentionality on that area is really, really important on that side. I want to jump to some other questions here from other people. From Mike, pragmatically, from time management and calendar perspective, what methods or tools have you found that facilitate your ability to collaborate at each stage?
Yeah, again, that's a fantastic question. So I just want to echo your point, Scott. That is, I think, super important as we think of collaboration. Usually what happens is a product manager may be very passionate about what we are doing. We are all very, we love the product that we are building. And you may be too consumed in doing it and forget that you also have to collaborate. And a lot of times many PMs might feel like collaboration is a overhead. But if you think about it, collaboration is one of your core jobs, right? If you don't collaborate, then the team is essentially they're not going in, the ship is not sailing in one direction, and you are just going to waste a lot of resources. So coming back to the question of how to collaborate in 5 stages, what was that the main question, Scott?
Yeah, like really, I think Mike's trying to get at here is like, how do you deal with like from, both a time management and calendar perspective, like how do you like, balance that out and essentially effectively collaborate when everyone's busy, right? I mean, like it's hard to find that time, maybe hard to find that moment. And Mike, feel free to let me know if I'm not paraphrasing your question correctly, but that's the key piece I think he's trying to get at is like, how do you do that really the best when everyone's struggling to find the time and the right moments to find that interaction?
Yeah. So there are a few things I'll call out. Firstly, I acknowledge collaboration is very hard because one, you're short on time always as a PM, and secondly, you're dealing with the people with different personalities and different objectives. They have different jobs. Like marketing has different job than product does. So they may have little interest or sometimes no interest in what you want to share or show in the short term. So the way to sort of manage this in terms of time is think of asynchronous collaboration and synchronous collaboration, right? There may be opportunities for you to go to office. Maybe some of you are already starting to go back to office. So you can potentially propose a day where it is sort of an office hour. And you can say, hey, I'm going to be in office every Wednesday, 8 a.m. Pacific time to 9 a.m. So if anybody has any questions or just wants to meet me, I'm available. So now instead of trying to find time with every individual, you are putting out an office hour and you're also putting yourself out there. So if somebody wants to meet you in person, they can show up to the office and see you. So that's one way of doing it. You can also have virtual office hours. If you need other team members, like you may want your engineering and design to be part of this office hour so they can hear feedback and answer questions. So you can also set up like a bi-weekly or a weekly office hour. So that's, I think, one way of managing time. The other part is asynchronous collaboration, which I think is very, very effective. And now so many tools are available. Like I said, I'm sure Productboard has a bunch of tools where when I think of collaboration, you're collaborating on your product requirements, you're collaborating on your customer feedback, you're collaborating on maybe some brainstorming on new ideas, you're collaborating on your roadmap. So all these are things that can be documented in a tool, whether it's Productboard or whether it's it can be a simple Word document or Excel file. Once you have that, all these tools have the capability to get comments async. So although your team may be remote and distributed in different time zones, you can share it out and let them put their comments, and you can resolve the comments. And once you have like a sizable chunk, you can summarize all of that in an email, or you can summarize in like a channel or a shared space. It could be even a chat, like summarize all of that and say, okay, this is what I'm hearing from all of you. Is this correct? So think of, time. When I think of time management and collaboration, think about how you can group things. Like, there are things that you can do together, and there are some things that you would have to do individually. Like you may still have to meet people one-on-one, but the idea here is that actively identify things that can be consolidated into those office hour model.
Yeah, it's great. I had an interesting session at a recent Product Excellence Summit with a couple of people in particular. One of our folks was a person from Loom and another person from Miro, talking about collaboration. And I think what they really stressed was a lot of those same kind of pieces is you have to make room for both synchronous and asynchronous to meet people where they are, but also find opportunities essentially as part of that to be really intentional about it, and also times to be like maybe less intentional, to give room for people to interact in the way that they're best able to. And our job as product managers is to kind of facilitate that. Again, we have to be intentional about making that room in our calendars and our activities. Thanks for the question, Mike. Really appreciate it. Another question here from Sana. When you are building internal products and not yet commercializing from outside business or your customers, how does that collaboration fall in place, as you might not have sales and marketing teams yet?
Yeah, fantastic. Again, a great question. A lot of us have internal tools that may not have external stakeholders. But again, when you think of internal tools, right, this could be maybe a ticket management application, which is an internal tool where you still have a customer, and this customer is your support team. So I would treat those internal users as our end customer, right? And in that case, actually, you have an opportunity to collaborate with them even more easily because you have access to them, right? In many cases, when we're building products for external or the customers that are not easily reachable, it gets really hard to get access to them. But if it's an internal tool, start with thinking, who am I building this tool for? Who is the end customer? And that's a starting point. There is a, there are a bunch of ways you can get feedback from them. Of course, you can start with qualitative methods of asking them what their pain points are. You could do a brainstorming session with them. The big opportunity here is to actually observe, do an observational research, which is really hard to do with the real customers outside, because they will not give you a full day. But this is an opportunity for maybe you, along with your design team or your research team, to identify and basically observe how are they spending their day, what is their workflow, and then find opportunities to improve that tool and product.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Another question coming in here is really like from Ava is, how do you ensure all team members collaborate so the PM's not the only one capturing notes and action items? In particular, Ava's a woman in product role, and often, I guess you get sort of nominated a lot of times by the team as not only because of the product manager function, but also sometimes, unfortunately, because of other dynamics to be the scribe. And so how do we essentially collaborate on that side more effectively? How do we ensure that the entire team has an accountability and responsibility for capturing both the inputs and the outputs of that collaboration?
Yeah. Again, great question. Collaboration is hard. Like I really want to acknowledge that. And a lot of times you may feel like you are the only one with the burden of collaboration. But if you zoom out, that's not true, right? So what essentially happens is people who you think are not wanting to collaborate, it might be because their current day priority is different. And that is why they're not interested. So at a very high level, you would want to start with departmental aligning on organizational goals. So one of my key points in the presentation was having a shared objective. And this would mean like the product team. Ultimately, I would imagine your team has a semester objective or like an annual objective. When the planning cycle starts, I think that's your opportunity to, whether that group is engineering or that group is design, to sit with them and align on that common objective. And that objective could be, we want to discover a new opportunity, for example, a new business opportunity to grow our market from X to Y, right? So if that is a shared objective now, so I can guarantee now that design and engineering will also start thinking about their initiatives in that manner. How can we gain more customer insights? How can we, what can we hack to kind of accelerate this whole process? So this is like a high level metric, and again, like this will not happen immediately, but it's important to take time and do it that way. On the other hand, if you're finding individuals that are not collaborating, that I think you can handle slightly differently. So my style would be to meet them one-on-one. So for example, within my feature crew, if I find that, maybe my engineer or design is not willing to collaborate, so I would set up a one-on-one with them and try to understand what is the pain point, like why are they behaving this way? Again, like starting with everybody feels they are collaborative, but the reality is different. And that's not because they don't want to collaborate, but it's because their priorities are different. So identifying that conflict that they have and helping them resolve that. So the way you would resolve, once you identify that, okay, maybe this is not their priority, then essentially you can handle it few ways, right? One, you can talk to them and ask for maybe some limited time. If that doesn't work out, you would, your manager can probably talk to their manager and then find out a way to collaborate. And if they're not collaborating, maybe suggest like how should we get to this business objective? If this is a shared business objective and the other department is not giving you time, if the other individual is not giving you time, then that would be some sort of an escalation, right? So that would be my approach. At team level, start with shared objectives. At an individual level, understand the person and the human. What are their motivations? Why do you think they're not collaborating?
Yeah, and even just a couple of thoughts I can share on that side. I think you somewhat in your own question answered your question, I guess I could say. I see that you mentioned like we should have a Miro or Confluence open during spec reviews so we can all capture notes at that time. Yeah, those kinds of things, like ways in which to make everyone a participant in the conversation and less of you the scribe, I think are really important. The other piece too is you can be just really intentional here and encourage people to be taking turns on that activity. Like for this meeting, I'm going to handle it. For the next meeting, who's going to be the person that's going to handle that in the team? So bring the entire team into that whole task and activity and make them feel part of that side of things. Another question here as well, maybe just to close things out, is how do you collaborate with individuals that tend to start trying to be the product manager? So often that might be maybe another part of that trio or triad, like your designer or your engineer, might be somebody else essentially that feels they've got that sort of opinion or want to control those reins. But how do you essentially, keep everybody working effectively together, collaborate together, while also not, maybe bumping into each other in the individual pieces of work that we do as product people?
Yeah, that's interesting again, and I'm sure all of us have at some point in our career had this situation.
Mm-hmm.
The way to sort of the way I would approach something like this is that firstly, again, starting with a one-on-one, because no person wants to be difficult by nature, right? They are trying to do their job with their best intent. So if they are trying to provide feedback on the product, and maybe they are interfering, you believe they're interfering with what you're trying to do. So the first starting point would be, if that's an individual, start with a meeting with them and try to understand what is their intent behind it. That's also an opportunity to have them explain what they think their role is. There could be a confusion in the role, right? They may actually believe that they own a part of product development. If so, that's your opportunity to sort of clarify with them individually. What do you think is your charter, and what is my charter? Share your charter as well. And if there is overlap, that is where you would try to resolve it with them individually, or you can also take it to your managers and then try to bring that clarity, because that is where I think usually this friction happens, is when individuals start believing that they own a certain thing, and that could be some miscommunication, or probably nobody told them that this is what you own, this is what you don't own. And in many companies, nothing is ever defined in black and white. Nobody will ever tell you that product manager actually owns this part of research, right?
Mm-hmm.
And design owns this part of research. Just to give an example, research is owned, it's a shared responsibility, and a designer might feel that a product manager is interfering with my work. So over here, I think, again, the best strategy, the most effective strategy is to talk to that individual and have them clarify what they believe is their role and what do I believe is my role. And in fact, like, use that energy. I would say, the bigger challenge is people not helping out. But if somebody is willing to be a participant in that product development cycle, I would actually channelize that energy and try to help get more buy-in and get more investments in the whole product development life cycle.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I remember a former colleague of mine used to always say, assume positive intent. And I think we can do that more often. Chances are we can find that common ground and find that balance between each other on that side. That's awesome. Really appreciate the time and great session and great conversation and questions afterwards here, Arvind. With that, we're just going to wrap things up. We do have a post-event survey. I've just shared a link inside the chat, and we'd love to hear your thoughts on today's event. Arvind, I know, would love to get the feedback as well. He's hoping to do this talk a little bit more and expand on it. So you can fill out our survey and you can win one of our monthly prizes as well on that side. You can also continue the conversation inside our community. Arvind and other people are there as well. If the things maybe about your practice and the work that you're doing, feel free to ask a question there, post a topic, talk about your challenges and pains. We'd love to have a open discussion and dialogue. That's how we all get better essentially at the work that we do as product managers. Lots of ways in which to grow your product craft within our community, whether it's meeting other product managers weekly, joining our monthly roundtables, or getting a mentor and matching up with somebody on that side to learn about their practices and their craft on that end. And we have lots of upcoming events as well in the next few weeks. Benjamin Barry's joining us next week to talk about phase shift and scaling innovation. We've got Perna Call from Amazon talking about launching ML products and the challenges that go with that. We've got David Reimer talking about creating your product story and how to get that whole story organized. Nils Davis is going to be talking with a little bit about roadmaps and persuasion, influence, and aligning your story. Connie Kwan's going to be talking about her storytelling system for roadmap stories. And we have JJ Rory as well coming back to talk about really those key traits that make a successful product manager. If you want to speak, want to share your knowledge, we'd love to hear from you. Feel free to get in touch and let us know if you're interested in being a speaker. And with that, thank you very much, everybody, for joining us. We really, really appreciate it. We'll leave you on to your day. And thanks again, Arvind, for that great session and collaboration.
Thank you.
All right. Take care, everybody.